my friends are simps.
By this point, anyone that's had even a passing interest in electronic music has probably come across the pocket operators. They've been around for years and they're kind of ubiquitous on YouTube with jams and all the rest of it. However, they don't necessarily always get the best reputation, not because they're not well built or anything like that, but because people tend to view them as kind of toys or not really serious musical instruments. And to be honest, until recently that was kind of my view. I had one of the original PO14 sub-bass synthesizers and I eventually sold it after a couple of months because it didn't really do what I wanted it to do. However, they are cheap and plentiful and they make nice sounds, and recently, if you follow my channel at all or have watched any of the videos I've put up within the past few months, I've kind of gotten back into the pocket operators, which is a bit of a surprise because I never thought I would, especially with, you know, the amount of other much more capable music gear I've got. And so in this video I wanted to explain a bit about why that was, because I think that the pocket operators have a lot to offer even if you've got loads of other gear, and I thought it was probably nice to share my experience and my change of perspective. When I first got the PO14 bass synthesizer, which I think was the first or one of the first that Teenage Engineering brought out, I had in my head that I was going to use it to sync up or, you know, work alongside my Game Boy sitting here, or one of them is. And so the idea was I was writing lots of tracks on LSDJ, and I thought when I was playing live what I could do is basically use the pocket operator to bulk out the bass, since the tracks are limited on this to 4. That didn't really pan out, and one of the reasons for that is that on the pocket operator, even though it's got an arranger or you can, you know, sequence things, there's a limited set of sequences. You can't recall those sequences, so you're basically stuck with a 16, I think. Is it 16? 1, 2, 3, 4, 16 sequences or patterns that you set up. And so for live use, where you might be playing, you know, 8, 10 different songs, it wasn't necessarily the most useful tool. And I also didn't have any great ways to sync it with the Game Boy, because it has some weird fucking 2PQQN or PPQN. The sync is different from standard MIDI, and so it's a bit of a faff to get it to sync. So that's why I got rid of them, and I didn't really look at them again until recently, where I tried out the PO33, which is the sampler, and that's the one that everyone seems to be raving about, and for good reason, because it's really powerful. You can sample anything using the wee built-in mic or using their line in, and it's got way more capabilities than some of the other pocket operators. However, once I started down the PO route, I found myself intrigued by their capabilities and ended up picking up quite a few of them. I don't know where they are right now, so I can't show you, and they're all in weird cases anyway, but I've kind of collected quite a few of them at this point. There are 2 main reasons I've changed my perspective on the pocket operators and why I've come around to appreciate them for what they are now. The first main reason is that I kind of got away from the notion that you always have to record and create something that you're going to then put out there if you want to make music. So beforehand with the Game Boy, I was always writing tracks to put on albums. My goal was always to put out albums or EPs or whatever else. And anything that would help me work on tracks that would be released that was my goal. Or playing live, that was the other thing that I was attempting to do. And the pocket operators didn't really help with that at all. As I've mentioned, they weren't really suitable for live use unless you were really creative and improvised, which I definitely was not. And they also weren't especially useful for making finished tracks. As I mentioned, the sync was a bit of a pain in the ass. And so, because they didn't really work for that, then I neglected them. But now I don't really feel the same pressure to do that. I've kind of just accepted that sometimes you make music because you want to, and it's perfectly fine to just make a jam and, you know, not even record it for the internet, believe it or not. So now at night, if I'm kind of, you know, I want to do some creative, but I don't want to go into the full hassle of going into the studio or, you know, making something serious that's going to be used later, I can just sit and play about, even, you know, hook up multiple pocket operators and do something a bit more elaborate, but without the pressure of having to worry about it being completely synced and, you know, something that I'm going to release. So that's the first main reason that I've now come round to them, because they are their own expressive thing in their own right. The second reason that I've come around to appreciate the pocket operators actually is kind of in contrast to the first one, and that is that they actually are pretty useful for music production. And what I mean by that is that a lot of the time when I write tracks, I find myself with bass melodies, as in bass line with an E, so foundational melodies, drums and stuff like that, but then it needs something else. And I always kind of struggle to find those wee extra bits to throw in and kind of give it a bit more of an interest rather than just the same loops going over and over. And I do try and, you know, get over that hump in various ways. I use different effects. I kind of try and throw in different synthesizers, but it can be a bit of a faff to set everything up just to get a wee, you know, extra bit of ear candy in one particular area. And so what I usually do is set up my Squart Pyramid, which is a sequencer. I find a synth I want to use, plug it in. It's a lot of effort just for the kind of finishing touches. However, what I've found the pocket operators are great for is exactly this. So I can take the PO, let's say the bass one, which I don't actually have anymore, but any of the pocket operators like the arcade or anything else, and if I wanted to just add a wee bit of colour to a certain section, I just bash out a pattern on it and record it into my DAW. And this is where the syncing comes in, because even though it has some weird syncing requirements, I now have the endorphin shuttle control, which basically means I can take the clock from my DAW, stick it through the shuttle control in my Eurorack, and it'll spit out a whole host of different clocks and different, you know, requirements, or different formats I should say, and I can stick this into my Eurorack and that's it synced with whatever track I'm working on. And so the really cool thing about this that I like a lot is that rather than having to faff about with a big sequencer, set up projects, you know, all that kind of and more involved stuff, this just sits on my desk plugged into the endorphin, and I can bash out wee extra sequences. And this has been surprisingly rewarding, because let's say I want to add just a wee bit of a drum fill onto something, or, you know, a wee bit of like hi-hat or kind of any of the weird sounds that you find on a pocket operator in the background, not as part of the main rhythm. They're perfect for that, and it doesn't take a whole lot of effort. So those two things have actually completely changed my perspective on pocket operators. I now think, especially given the price of them, they're a really handy tool to have kicking about, and I've ended up writing full songs with them, which I never thought I would. When you combine stuff like the MPC and you sequence your own drums and you add in a wee bit of synth, having that kind of unique sound from the pocket operators is actually great, and I'm looking forward to see what I can do with them in the future. The moral of this and the point of this video, I guess, is that if you've looked at pocket operators in the past and not been impressed or written them off as wee toys, or, you know, thought they don't really have a place in proper music production or whatever else, then I would urge you to reconsider, because I was not a fan and I've changed my mind. And that's it. That's the video.